Here, I'm going to send you my Calendly, okay?
Yeah.
Boom. And we are live. What's up, everybody? We're live on YouTube now. We're switching up the Derby Meetings. Welcome to the Derby Meetings. My name is Andres Gamboa. I'm the host of the Ponytails podcast, and I am joined live today. Let's do some quick intros, if you guys don't mind. A little bit of brief background of what you guys do and who you are. And then we can jump into the topic for today, which is creating productive environments in the people that you work with. So let's start with Pat, and then we'll go around the clock if that's cool.
Pat Roach. I worked with Southwestern Advantage for 13 years as a bookseller and sales manager, and then took about a year off to go broke. And then I started Southwestern Real Estate, which is now celebrating 15 years in business. And we are in 8 markets, 8 states, I guess. So, we're doing that whole thing, residential brokerage. And soon, hopefully, before the end of the year, we'll be significantly into the commercial space as well. So that's kind of where we're at right now. Yeah.
That's pretty sweet. Pretty sweet. Thank you, Pat. Alicia?
Pat is lying. He wasn't just at Southwestern Advantage. He crushed everybody while he was at Southwestern Advantage. So just for the record.
Believable.
Sure.
My name is Alicia Huck. My company is Maverick & Company. I sold books for 5 summers back in the day and did a bunch of consulting with a couple district managers big sales managers after that. And my business now, my specialty is working with the executive teams of fast growing companies. So companies that get big organically and then, all hell sort of starts to break loose in every direction. And I always think it's interesting because in sports, we understand automatically why every team would have a coach. But in business, we don't give our teams coaches. We just have everybody doing their own thing. So I work with the whole team at the same time at the executive level, and we move really fast and level up really quick. And that's what I do now.
Heck yeah. And Mr. Metcher?
Yes, sir. So Will Metcher, Southwestern Consulting. We do one-on-one sales performance and leadership coaching for people, not just in the book space, but all industries. Especially those wanting to work on breaking through their self-limiting beliefs and obviously crushing their goals. I sold books for 9 summers. And one of the things I love about it is just, basically being able to take all the principles that we learned from, going out and banging on doors 85 hours a week, selling books, and pouring that into, the world. And my goal is still to get one of my clients to go out and do execs out in the parking lot before they go to work every morning. But we're still plugging away on that. But side note, I actually just had a conversation with a guy that sold with Southwestern. He did not sell books. This guy's like a managing partner with a big financial institution. Did you guys know that we had a division that sold fire extinguishers door to door?
Yep.
No. What?
What the heck?
Hey, here's another fun fact. Do you guys remember the New York Knicks, Charlie Ward? I think he was like maybe a Heisman candidate or something for football and a great basketball player. He sold fire extinguishers with Southwestern back in the day.
It's amazing.
The more
That's
you know.
awesome.
And that's
We got to get we got to get him on the Ponytails podcast.
Yes.
Yes, can we get the fire extinguisher division people?
Yes.
Just get like a panel. Just be like,
be amazing.
Well, think about it. They're selling smoke alarms in Europe right now. I mean, did you guys know that? Like that's kind of E1 Ventures started with one product, smoke alarms. Because nobody in Europe has smoke alarms, I guess. It's like a novel concept.
No way.
Saving lives.
Culture, man.
It's the salesperson, not what you sell.
That's right.
It's the pilot, not the plane.
Dang. That's...
Well, I think the plane has a lot to do with it.
You can go watch the Top Gun movie. It doesn't. We found out.
Okay.
Oh man. All right. Well, let's jump into the topic of discussion for today. We'll try to be off by the top of the hour. These are usually 45 minutes to an hour. of a conversation. If you guys want to go check out the other ones, they are on our Facebook and our LinkedIn, so go check them out there. They're probably going to start going to here, and they're going to be popping into our Spotify and Anchor as a separate podcast, so keep an eye out for that as well. But the topic for today is how to create a productive environment in your team. And so this can be with like incentives. This could be through different competitions that you might set up, or any other creative ways that you've heard, seen, or personally have done to encourage or motivate others, and just some neat ideas on that. The reason this is being brought up is because right now kids are coming out of the book field, and we just got back from our Bizzler trip last week. Whoop, whoop. That was so fun. And we want to make it be a thing for alumni companies to bring their people out as an incentive trip to our Bizzle trip. So it's kind of like a win-win for everybody. Good way to go network, and a cool, fun trip to Columbia next year. That's where we're going. Columbia 2023 in October. So with that in mind, and that kind of vibe of like, how do we incentivize people? How do we motivate people? How do we make a productive environment? I'll open it up to the floor. And if nobody talks, if it's awkward silence for a while, then I will call on somebody. Pat, you're the only one not muted, so we'll just go with that.
Okay. Well, this is a pretty big topic. So, I mean, we could go a lot of different directions with this. But since we're talking about Sizzler, why don't we just kind of hit so for Southwestern Real Estate, it's kind of funny because it was kind of my wife's idea. When I started the company, it was just me for 5 years, just trying to figure out how do you even do real estate, and how do you make this work as a realtor, and how do you make the business work when you have more realtors, all that kind of stuff. But as we started to add people, my wife was like, when you work for Southwestern Advantage, we used to take some pretty sweet vacations as a result of you doing well. Is there any way we could work that into real estate? And so I called Henry, like, hey, could we, I mean, I don't even know if this is possible. It was like this mystery. Could we make a Sizzler for real estate? And his answer was just really succinct, because he was like, you just make the growth pay for the trip. And I mean, it couldn't have figured that out, but it just never dawned on me, oh yeah, I guess you could do that. So there's a couple of things that you have to keep in mind, and I don't want to dumb this down too much. I'll just assume nobody's ever thought about it before, because I hadn't prior to that conversation. But you need to know what your profit margin goals are for the company and what you're trying to hit, because that's actually a super important piece of the calculus for this. Because you could say, all right, if an agent grows 25% in a year, that would be typically pretty good growth for an individual business. So how much profit would the company earn on those dollars, on that growth? But if you put yourself in a position where all of the money earned actually is spent on the trip, you're no further ahead, right? So you got to make sure that actually there's enough profit in that growth, so that if you take a chunk out, everybody's still actually happy with the remaining result in terms of profitability for the company. So we were able to do that. And what we found is with different pay plans that we have for folks, we can put separate criteria down that actually ended in that result. And it tended to be about a 25% growth for most people. If they grow their business that way, then we can afford for them to go on a nice vacation with everybody. And I would say the cool thing about Sizzler, just from a company principle standpoint, is it's more than just the reward of the trip. As you guys know, it's hanging out with other people from the company and feeling like you're tight when you come out of that, just because you got to spend some time with, Nick Sproul in Florida, or Mark Fuller, Justin in Sydney, and in Texas. Like all of a sudden you come off these things, you feel like I've got a new friend that I didn't have before. So there's a company benefit from the socialization of it. There's a company benefit from inspiring growth, and there's a retention component to it, because people really love doing those trips, and not a lot of other companies offer that. One quick side note that I will say, we had a situation early on where we had somebody we thought, okay, you've got 12 months to win the award. So it's January through December. And we want to then go ahead and book that trip in January, so that way we can have the trip and everybody can come back and get to work. And January is kind of a slower month for real estate anyway. So let's just go ahead and do that. And just because of weird things, we had a guy who won the trip. He's like friends with everybody. He comes back and finds out that the guy who had invited him into the company was leaving, and he quit with him. And we were like, what the heck, dude? You were just on the Sizzler saying everybody's your best friend. Like, how could this happen? So what we do now is we actually qualify people January through December, but we don't do our trip until the following October for those winners. And that way we can avoid, if somebody quits, it's like, okay, well, we don't have to pay for their Sizzler at least. But that's actually helpful, because then there's kind of this 10-month lag where people are winning their award and then going on the trip that much later. So I don't know. That's kind of how we ended up setting ours up. Long answer.
Brilliant.
Pat's like, we're going to delay the trip by 4.5 years.
And you got to be employed or you don't get to go.
And if you don't win it every single year, you don't get any of your trips. So just for the record.
What if you did like that, where you, for 4 years, they could win a trip, and then the 5th year they just stay in Mexico or wherever for like a month, or you know what I mean? They win like that. They win 4 years worth. They bank it, and 12 years later they're like, I'm here for a month for like the whole year.
A month wouldn't do it. I think that's not going to be enough.
While their business dwindles to nothing.
Yeah. Well, everything falls apart that they've built so well. Yeah, that's brilliant. I like what you said with the camaraderie building, right? When we were at Bizzler last week in Mexico, we had people come from Florida, from Arizona, from all over the country, alumni of different like ages. Most of us were a little bit younger because they were the ones that wanted like to really go party. But it was really cool that we had different generations of book people from different years that sold from different organizations, and literally it was as if like we were best friends. Like it was just like, oh my gosh, oh, and you sold this so many summers, and what do you do now? And it was kind of the same vibe we get in the podcast. And now when we left, we felt a lot closer because we were part of that experience together, even though, there was other people there that we could have made friends with too. But I like that you said that. Fair enough.
Well, I will take things in a slightly different direction and say something that might not be as popular, but I think one of the best things you can do if you want to create a high-performing team is fire people. And I don't mean like fire just anybody, right? But the truth is the people at the bottom of your organization that are performing at the lowest rate, they take up the majority of your good manager's time and energy and resources. They create tons and tons of problems. Like if you're not taking a good hard look every single year at your management team and asking yourself who causes more problems than they solve, you're making a huge mistake, because one of the biggest reasons that high performers will quit is because there's somebody in their environment that they hate that is going like that isn't restrained, right? Isn't being managed. That person can get away with whatever they want. And by the way, in some cases, that's your top performing salesperson. And they do whatever they want. And maybe that works when it's you and 2 other people. But when you start getting to mass, you have to really think about not your culture, but your work culture. What are the standards and behaviors and norms by which we get things done? And it's interesting. I was just rereading, which, I think once a session, we should all bring up a book, right? And see who else has got the book. But
I like that.
Netflix, No Rules. One of their key frames, Reed Hastings, the guy who wrote it, head of Netflix, he was running a smaller company years and years ago, back in like 2013. And they ended up having to lay off 30% of their workforce. And they were really scared, understandably, about how everybody else would respond. Because we just fired 30% of your coworkers. We're in a really tough situation. We're in a cash flow crunch. And you don't know if you're next. All kinds of ugly things. And what they found is they actually had people work harder and be happier. Like the whole environment changed radically, because the only people who were left were people who were going to kick ass. So, I think sometimes, especially as businesses grow, and I'll speak to that because that's where I spend most of my time, it's hard because you need butts and seats, you need people. But there's a lot of good research that suggests that you're just not going to manage your way out of bad behaviors. People are either going to behave in the right direction and you can support them with good management structure, or they're just not the right people. And even in there, they cite some interesting research. Netflix made a decision that for creative work, one talented developer, so they've done all kinds of research, right? They get all these developers in a room, talent down to low, give them projects, and they test out to see how much better the really good people are. And you think maybe your best people are going to be 2 or 3 times better than your lowest performers. The truth is they're more like 20, 25 times better when it comes to coding. So I think it would be interesting to look at salespeople, right? I mean, what would happen in a sales organization if you just had people who were kicking butt, right? There's good reasons, like when we sold books, to keep people at all ends of the spectrum. And the truth is you just don't know, right? Because they're young and not being developed. But, there's behavioral research that suggests that when you do promotions for certain kinds of employees, they actually have a negative effect. And what you should do, especially for creative people, is pay them as much as you can and let it ride. Like, don't worry about it, right? So I think it's useful to think about, but the number one mistake I see people make is they keep bad people with bad attitudes. It's attitude, effort, and results, right? And anybody who's not consistently giving you all three is dragging you down, and you're just not present to the weight that causes in your organization and the drag it has on your momentum.
Whoa, that's a lot. Wait, question for this, and before Will shares his spot, this is interesting. Okay, question for you, and this is for all three of you, based on what Alicia said. Do you think that it's just performance based? Because it sounds like it's not just that. Like, what if I have a guy that's selling a lot or doing really well, and whatever? In Pat's case, he sells a lot of houses, or gal, she sells a lot of houses, but the culture does not fit. Like the way that they are, the beliefs, their values, maybe what the companies isn't the same. Is that what you're talking about, or is like what are the key, or what are the more important factors that would consider someone, hey, you got to go?
I would literally say anybody that has behavior that's immoral or illegal, you got to get rid of them. You gotta. Right. There's no second guessing that, right? And I've seen some pretty ugly things that people let go on inside big companies. But I always just teach managers to look for attitude, effort, and results. And you can have a bad day, right? You can be getting a divorce and have 3 months of like, you suck and your world kind of sucks, but you can still be doing 2 out of the 3. And everybody should be doing 3 out of the 3 pretty regularly. What I see people do is they tolerate so-and-so in purchasing because that person has all these relationships, right? We tend to overestimate the value of the people inside our organization and underappreciate them conversely. So we think people are irreplaceable. We think we could never. And then usually when that person leaves, even if we thought they were good, there's always snakes under the rocks that people dig up and things that they didn't realize or know. So in my mind, you got to keep your eye on the ship, because the ship is what gets it done, right? Pat could have an all-star salesperson if that person is eating away at the culture. And haven't we all worked in organizations where there was somebody who sold a lot of books and got away with a little bit more stuff because they sold a lot of books? Like, It makes a difference to have people who are doing the small things right. And those rules, I think, still apply at any level of organization, any kind.
All right. That's been today's Derby meeting. Thank you much, everybody.
Mic drop. Jeez, that's awesome.
Holy cow, that was solid. Matcher, follow up.
I got to follow that. Man, that's so I'll kind of take a different approach. I think Alicia's
extendable pen.
Just give them success.
And over here,
you do execs.
We'll get you a sweatshirt that says Southwestern on it. It'll be great.
So, no, and I think I love that. I have mine somewhere. That's so cool that you still have that.
I do too, actually.
Wow. No, so I think Alicia's spot on and all of that. And I think, again, that's kind of like 30,000 foot looking down, big organization. And that makes sense as far as her work goes. And since I'm a lot more into the details and more intentional one-on-one, I think from the standpoint of like recognition and incentivizing people, they kind of talk about this idea And there's all kinds of studies that say like, this does and doesn't work. But the idea of like positive and negative motivation and like what pushes people and what gets them to change. And I think creating that sense of motivation should not replace having a strong vision and like what you're creating and building, because that is it goes away, right? Like that's something like a small incentive, like the extendable pin, right? It works for a week, but it's not something that you can build a career on. And so I think when I work on, get out of here, just like pull. You got your book bag next to you as well?
I'm actually a little embarrassed that I could pull. I don't know where this came from, but sometimes they have me speak at Sunday meetings here in Colorado, and then you just come home with stuff. I don't even remember what I got this one.
I feel like I gotta like pull some stuff out of my office.
I know, where's your Augmentino, man? That's like
I mean,
I got a book, and then
I got that. I'm with you there.
I feel like we just did some kind of like virtual magic trick. Like we just
that was great. Did I start naming other things
so
like
funny, man?
Where's our Mufus at? And see if we just magically pull those out.
Pat's got those. Pat's in charge.
No, but
sure.
I got this. I got that though.
Kid. What?
Definition.
What is happening here? So
This is
like the idea of positive and negative motivation. And I think for me, like, in different stages, like some things work more than others. And like, I kid you not, I remember there was this just such a small little thing that I was working towards one week that I created, that when I was living out in Portland, Oregon, I remember there was this burrito that was like $5 and it had a chili relleno stuffed in the middle of it. It was magical. Andres, I got to hook you up as far as exactly where it is, but it's amazing. And I remember I like set like an activity goal for myself, and I like told other people, of course. But I remember I worked my absolute tail off just for that stupid burrito, because it wasn't something that I was normally going to do and go get. And so like positive motivation, and then creating things that are intentional to the individual, like that worked for me. I have a client that is just on fire right now with where he's at. He's a financial advisor, and we had talked about just he needed to kind of get out of a slump. And so we were talking through things that motivate him and things that he enjoys doing. And he actually came up with this himself. And I think this is good from leaders, coaches, allowing others to kind of come up with like, what's going to push you, instead of like, here's what I'm going to do for you. And his name's Jeff. Jeff's a big baseball fan. And every night he has like the MLB package where he'll watch like an hour or two of baseball. And we just made a really simple, like, hey, if you make 10 dials in a day, which was like a big step for him, you got to watch baseball that night. If you didn't get your 10 in, you're not going to be able to watch baseball. And we've been doing this for 3 weeks now, and he has hit every single day. And it's cool because like his activity is starting to climb a little bit more. And like, what's awesome, of course, the intention of sharing accountability with other people, 360-degree accountability. He had texted me when we'd first started this, and his wife, Bree, he goes, by the way, Bree hopes I totally fail at this. She hates baseball, which I think is awesome, but it's fun to watch. And this was something that he created, which means even more because it's his idea. It's his thing that he's pushing. And what of course you want to create is less of that baseball connection and more of just the habit around the activity itself. And again, that incentive, that recognition that he's creating within himself, and ideally the goal here is that he's just built this habit that is just a continued source of motivation and intention that he can kind of grow on and build. So I think recognition is key, and especially the idea of just recognizing. And if you noticed, I didn't say how much premium that you write per day, right? Like the idea here is that we incentivize and recognize activity over results. We want to put our confidence in our activity, not our results, because of course that's what drives business. That's what drives habits. So a little bit of a different perspective. I agree with you, Alicia. Let's fire the heck out of people that suck and are draining to the business, even if they are lighting the world on fire. Like that doesn't serve the company as a whole, 1, 5, 10 years down the line.
Well, and I'll tag in to just say, Will, part of what I love is that acknowledgement and appreciation is such a great way to build accountability and culture. And I'm working on an article or a white paper, some people call it the book, called Bigger is Different. And it just explains what happens when your business gets big and the ways that it goes off the rails, because it's really confusing if you're on the inside. And one of the pieces in there that I think is really important for people to focus on is what you celebrate. And celebration is not like, we're all grown-ups, right? And we all celebrate so politely. We're like, oh, Pat, that's lovely that you hit your goal. Good job, man. Way to go. And that's not celebration. Like celebration is visceral. Celebration it moves you, right? And it's, you can sell. I think that's part of the reason why the stupid telescopic pen, because damn Jim Elward was like, was excited about it. It was like a thing. And then all of a sudden you're like, I got to have this stupid pen that might cost what, a penny, 2 pennies? But it matters, right? We're all carrying around our success coins because of what they represent to us. And so I think it's a good idea. I started a few years ago when I do public speaking. So one of my things is I talk about you're good, you're great, you're awesome, you're a rock star, and what's above rock star? Ninjas. So we actually have all these cute little ninjas. Sorry, I wonder if I have another one. They're just little tiny plastic ninjas, and I just started giving them away when I speak, because sometimes you need a reminder, right? And these little symbols, people will send me pictures of their ninjas. Like, here's where I put it. My kid tried to steal it. This is my ninja. They carry them around. Celebration is partly how you create community. It's what it means to belong to that group. And sometimes I think we want to double down on that kind of emotion, right? That guy's getting his 10 calls a day. That's a big deal. And, you can hear it in his voice, right? If you get to call up Will for your whatever, how often they meet, and Will is excited for you and with you, which I assume is one of the things you do really well, that makes a difference. Celebration creates community, and community reinforces culture. So, ironically, you're agreeing with me, but I'm also going to double agree with you.
That's good. That's good.
So good.
I might chime in here on one thing that I learned. If you guys, I don't have like the rap sheet that y'all monsters do, you ninjas do, but here's something I remember from my first summer that really was cool, that I think our student manager Steve Thadden did really well, which I've actually translated into how we run the show here, which is kind of giving everyone ownership for their part, because people will work for you, but they will work for themselves much harder. And if you give them that ownership of like, this is on, like, for example, with Naomi, right? We were like, hey, Bizzler, next year, you plan it. I don't want to, you just report to how it's going. But if you want to choose to go to other places instead of Columbia, don't care. Just make it happen. Obviously, there's some like do's and don'ts, but overall, you take ownership, and people are more willing to work harder for that and produce for that. And so my first summer, Steve did that with us, where you guys remember when they told you not to share units with your roommates? They're like, hey, whatever you do, just don't talk about how many units you sold. But we found a way to kind of do that without doing it, where if we hit stake, which is, as you guys know, 100 units for the day, then we would go to the fridge and you could get a piece of jerky from the fridge and eat it. Well, now this is when we're still doing like the paper reports, right? So we would come home, and you first of all, you never want to be the first car back. You're like, damn it, I'm the first car back. And you're just sitting there, you're typing out your one customer for the day or whatever the hell. And then Josh Martinez would come in and he'd go straight to the fridge, grab himself a jerky, and start working on his bar. And I'd be like, damn it, he beat me today, and Steve would come in. And so there was nothing better than when you would come home, you're the second or third car, you get there and you're like, I'm gonna get them, because when you were coming home, I mean, all day, I didn't care who bought or how many they bought, but I knew it was over 100 units, so I'd be like, all right, here we go. I'm just so looking forward to eating this jerky, not for the taste of the jerky, but to look at Josh's stupid face and be like, take that, bro. So it was such a really cool way, and man, did it push us. The days where we all three got steak and ate it, we never shared exactly how many units. Could have been 101 or could have been 199, but it was the fact that like it was a way to kind of share but not share, and just kind of drive that competition for ourselves was so fun.
So I like, you said 199, like if you hit 200, are you like doubling up on the jerky? And
so fun
Alicia,
story.
what was that one more time?
Fun story. So first summer, Monday of week 6, I had just been on the pace setter. Now I'm feeling top of the world, and I hit 200 and some odd units, 280 or something like that. And Martinez comes in. I come home. He's first home, but he's eating one piece of steak, and he's like smug about it. I'm like, oh, cool. And I go into the fridge. I grab a piece of jerky. Goes, oh, nice job. Start filling out my form. Finish I'm like, oh wait. And I go up and I go to the fridge and I grab a second piece. And he goes, no fucking way. I'm like, yeah, dude. Hey, Custis today. How you doing? So yeah, to answer your question, 100%. It was so fun. It was such a fun thing to do. And we created ways to be like competitive, but not in a way that was going to tear someone else down. Like we never felt bad that we didn't do well, because I know that was the danger of sharing units, is you're doing great, your roommate's not doing so hot, or your coworker in this. And you know, anybody listening that isn't selling books, they might go, oh, it's going to feel somebody else. It's going to make them feel bad. It's going to make them feel bad because they're not doing well and you're doing well. But how do you avoid that? You kind of keep it light and fun that way. And I feel like that's what I learned as far as like, you know, competition and productivity.
Can I add a little nugget to that? Because I think one of the things that, and this is like a culture piece for any sales organization. What Southwestern's really good at, by design, is that you can, like, you may be in competition with your roommates and other people in the org or other people in the company because you just want to show up or whatever. But you're not actually direct competitors, right? Like you don't have to knock on the same doors. Everybody's got their own territory. It's cordoned off. And so that way, you know, you really do kind of have your section where it's kind of up to you. So what's cool about that is from a competition standpoint, nobody ever is feeling like, hey, dude, you are doing well at my expense. And not all organizations actually are set up that way. In fact, in real estate, just when I was in the investigative stage of how this works, a managing broker told me, yeah, most of our top producers don't come to our trainings because they don't want to share their best stuff because they kind of view everybody else in the room as their competition. Now, I think what we've been able to do to try to recapture what we had at Southwestern is, oh, great, Lee's here.
Oh, great.
Great. I was just saying something. Now all we're going to do is want to look at Lee and not listen to what
I think we're all actually required to yell Lee at the same time, like Norm on Cheers is actually
Lee! No, the only reason I tuned in is because what you were about to say, Pat. So go ahead.
Oh, nice.
I heard you were going to say something important.
Well played. So, but to that point, we have been super intentional about this idea that Southwestern real estate agents are not my competition. We're teammates. We root for each other. We cheer for each other's success. Like this is a mantra that we say frequently, because we do want to have that environment where I want my other friends that work at Southwestern Real Estate to crush it. I want them to be awesome. And even if if they edge me out in production or whatever, in the end, that's so what? We're all studs together. And that's a lot more fun to be able to, from a company culture, than walking around going, I really have this nugget that is crushing, and I'm not going to tell anybody here because they might beat me. You know, like that's kind of a sick and twisted way. And ultimately, the way that gets reinforced is we teach people, as an agent, you're going to get your referrals from the people you network through, the relationships you create. So that's your territory. Okay. Don has his territory of people that he's networking through and, you know, building relationships with. And whoever builds the relationship owns the territory. That's the person they're going to have their affiliation with. That's the person they're going to send their friends and family members to for real estate help. So you create your territory. You create your territory. Now we have the same dynamic that the book field had. And so there's just no like stealing people or whatever. And it's not as pure in real estate because you can get a little bit of a sticky situation if two people run in the same circles. But on the whole, it works quite well. Just like Preparation H.
Brilliant.
That
Brilliant.
was weird. I just want to tag in before Lee goes off and says 18 brilliant, really things. That everything Pat's talking about, right, is about building culture and being intentional about how you frame things, right? Like a key skill in leadership is context. How do we think about this? How do we frame that so that it invites a set of behaviors that are going to help people do better? And you can hear it. And I don't know, Pat, you've done okay, right? I mean, it works, this stuff you're talking about?
So far, so good.
So far, so good. And everybody, let me introduce who's listening in. Let me introduce Lee McCroskey. I mean, he needs no introduction, but he was with Southwestern for many, how many years now? How many years was it totally? 22?
36 if you count selling books, I think.
You can always count selling books.
You always count selling books. Phenomenal stuff.
Well, there was a time you didn't. So I'm just, yeah, I was there a while.
It was, yeah, and phenomenal story. And everybody knows Lee's Dirt Pile story. That was something that was important in sales school. Lee was in the corporate world of Southwestern Advantage for a while and is now doing a bunch of other really, really cool stuff. And so now he's joining us for our Derby meetings, hopefully regularly, but we're still working on it. We got a microscopic pen. You missed the success coin. And just to bring you up, we're talking about how to create productive environments in your culture, in your company. Alicia talked about, getting rid of toxic people. Will talked about individual performances and knowing what motivates each individual. And Pat took it more from a cultural standpoint. So that's kind of where we're at right now. Pat, on something that you said, because I know this to be true from just personally knowing people that work for Southwestern Real Estate, is just Meredith Gardner is a perfect example. She's crushing it. She had a really great first year. Dear friend of mine, and she was talking specifically about how in the company that you guys, in the culture that you guys have created, it's easy to do well because people are cheering you on and they're really like, it's a real group effort for everyone. And I don't think that's as easy as it's easier said than done for sure. But I appreciate that thought, because being able to have people celebrate you well, that is something that we did really well in Southwestern. The Sunday circles, like the pace setter, these were all different things that we used to celebrate people and drive them to improve, and kind of like the cream rose to the top that way. So thanks for sharing.
And I will say one quick thing about this that I relearned this summer with my daughter selling books is you really actually have to listen to your salespeople about when they come to you and make the point, hey, that actually doesn't motivate me. I think as leaders, a lot of times we can go, no, everybody likes recognition. And go, no, you're just wrong. You actually like it. And or at least if we don't say that, we continue to behave in that way. When I think we have to really pay attention, there's some people who get really uncomfortable with that. And I think it actually is worth redoing how you do their appreciation versus just the recognition thing that you think they need or everybody else needs or wants. So I had a guy in our company who was consistently beating me year after year. And he was always like, hey, I don't like that. I don't actually think that's actually a good thing. And I was like, well, we can agree to disagree. But what I'm also going to say is you should not be on those recognition calls. Like, let's just go ahead and have you sit out, because you actually serve a good purpose in setting the pace for other people, an example of what could be done. but I also don't want you to feel uncomfortable with it. So how about if you just become the white whale that nobody ever sees, and we'll talk about how awesome you are when you're not there. Are you good with that? And that actually was a way to help him not have to be uncomfortable, but actually let the example still show, here's what your potential, or here's somebody who's blowing it out of the water, and this is what the end game of this career can kind of look like. You don't agree, Lee?
No, it's just your Moby Dick reference in Melville really threw me as an English major. Like, you're the white whale. Are people pursuing him? Are they going to harpoon him? Is Captain Ahab involved? These are the things I think about.
Oh, because he was elusive. That's because that we started to refer to him as the white whale because he was so elusive. Nobody had ever seen him. He wasn't ever around. We just heard about this guy, Carl Cho.
Who may or may not be a real person. There's no evidence that he actually exists. And by the way, Pat, if you're going to reference a book, you have to hold up the book. That was the rule we created like 10 minutes ago.
It's the other thing. What's also interesting is he isn't white.
Leah, I like how
Very
that's
nice.
what you latched onto, though. It's like, no, that's not true.
Well, I mean, who's
reference?
I think it's really about Ahab and his monomania. So who is that? Is that you, Pat?
I said more than I should have.
Okay, maybe I shouldn't have unmuted myself. So please continue.
You didn't have to, because it was your facial expressions that did the
Yeah, I'm not good at poker.
No, it's all good. It's all good. Now, okay, question for the group on that. It's at what point do you discern, because Alicia was kind of talking about this too, where sometimes people aren't the right fit and it takes a while to determine. They're like maybe medium producers and your team's crushing it, but they're always kind of like lagging. At what point do you discern to say, hey, this isn't a good fit? It's not necessarily that you're a terrible fit, but this isn't for you. And how do you like really reward and, I don't want to say punish, but like give consequence to difference in performances or behaviors that you might, see as you go through your company's growth? I mean, Alicia was talking about this earlier, so I was like, what happens if you have someone in the middle? Like, what do you do?
I mean, I'll make it really quick. Like, my thought process is I've actually known several people that shouldn't have gone out and sold books again. Like they kind of reached that level. And I think and again, we can think of it more from like is it serving them to continue to stay? Because I think there's some people that they're kind of trapped and they're just deciding I'll just kind of grind it out again. And like, I know it's supposed to be good because that's what they tell us. And it's like, well, is it really serving you to continue to stay there?
Yeah. I love that, Will. And I think it's also about organizationally, right? If you run a creative organization, you might need top talent, right? Like Netflix. Lee, we were referencing other books earlier. They talk about talent density because that's the majority of their business is a creative enterprise. If you have a really innovative company, that might be one thing. If you are into operational excellence because you produce heart valves or something like that, right? So I think you have to decide in advance what talent level you need, and then use that as the framework and evaluate people against it, as opposed to, oh, I like this person, I don't like this person's kind of a pain because they contradict me in meetings or they just see things really differently, right? When it's too subjective, I think that's one of the places we run into trouble. And when we can't define what the performance is that we want, so we're really just looking for people that don't make us uncomfortable, and we can say that they're good. So if you decide in advance, I think that is the game changer.
I'm thinking about, people so I think it's fair to say also that not every person is going to come into a sales organization with the same talent level or capacity. And it doesn't mean that somebody who's mediocre can't serve the company well or be benefiting themselves at their capacity, right? That's kind of what they're going to be able to do if it's job A or job B. And if they are culturally positive and helpful, and they are a person who's committed to growth, then I think they have a place to stay and continue. And that growth might be like they're working on themselves. They have goals that they're trying to hit, and they're not a distraction to anyone. I think sometimes you'll see people who are mediocre to low producers who are some of the most vocal people in the room. And it's kind of like, this isn't going to be the thing. This is not the, you guys know what I'm talking about. The way that we decided to do something different from what we saw in the real estate world was set minimum standards for production, because so many people come into real estate and it's a slow start anyway for most people. And we were just like, okay, here's the standard that you have to hit for year one, and year two, you have to grow that. If you don't grow that, then you're kind of in the hot seat, and we're going to put you on a program to try to help get you on board. If that's not happening, then this just isn't the place. And I think that that's actually super positive for the organization at large, because when you have people like that who are diminishing, and they're showing up to every meeting, it's like, is this the kind of product that we're putting into the world? This person needs to find a new way to serve humanity, because this isn't it. And making sure that there's some standards around that. I think that's super healthy. This goes to Alicia's point, I think it's a one version of what you were starting off with.
I love that. Lee, you got something? I feel like you're thinking, you're churning.
Well, I'm still trying to make sure I understand the topic. Generally, I agree with everything everyone said. Call me Ishmael, but
Yes.
I don't. But yeah, so how to create culture in your organization?
Creating productive teams, productive environments, high performance teams, or like we talked about incentivizing people, celebrating people.
Yeah.
Thoughts on that?
Well,
Will's
bye.
gotta go.
Together.
Will just said peace. I was about to say something really important, and he left. So he's going to lose.
He could have had a great life. It could have been so awesome.
I want to say I love all of you, and I'm
also going to go.
Our next conversation. I'm out.
Pat's got to go too. Look at that.
Okay.
We can do last 10 minutes.
I just got to say, I was looking at everybody's titles, and it's like Will Metcher, Southwestern Consulting, Alicia Huck, Maverick and Company, and then it gets shorter and shorter, and Lee's just Lee. Lee's getting Madonna status, like Prince status. It's just one.
Yeah. One.
Shakira.
Yeah, one proper noun. I want to be Ishmael. I'm going to be Ishmael Inc. from now on. So put that up. That's the way it should be because of Pat. Anyway, I guess we're still recording. So, I like the idea, just to try to contribute something that somebody said about you've got to find out what people want and go to their world rather than prescribing, here's what we're going to do to motivate you. I mean, Southwestern, we had so many people, and we were such a forward-leaning company. Like there's toward motivation and away motivation. We were all toward people. So the people that were away motivated, that would just shrink and shrivel up when people were having them stand on a chair and be recognized. I mean, that was hard on them because that's not how they did it mentally. So I think the more you can tailor or customize your motivation, and certainly make that an internal process for people and not, a carrot and a stick. I mean, you're never going to create a perfect atmosphere for motivation, but yeah, it takes a lot of work to motivate people individually.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier just to go one size fits all. Here's your telescopic pen, or as Andre said, the microscopic pen, which was very small.
Did I say?
I didn't want to point that out.
If you got your demo goal, but you didn't sell more than 300 units, you got the microscopic.
pen.
You
Yeah.
suck. This is all we can give you. It's
It was an actual pen, but yeah, you could crush it down to something that's half an inch long.
well, you don't need much ink because you're not writing up orders anyway. So who cares?
Yeah,
Save a tree.
didn't even come with ink. It was only a half inch long. You could,
Somebody else has this giant tub of ink.
Oh man.
Anyway.
Oh, man.
yeah, I'm glad I could throw in that little comment, but sorry, yeah, that's
That
just
was
one
great.
thought. Yeah.
No,
fine.
so question for you, Lee, on that same thought is like, so do you think that has to do with if I'm listening onto this conversation and I own I run an organization, I'm a manager of a team, you know, do you set that tone based on you? Like you were saying, Southwestern was very forward toward leaning people, right? But there are a ton of organizations that are away that they you know, they're and for people who don't understand what that means, like, you know, getting away from a punishment or if I don't do this, then I'm gonna, right? What happened? Do you set the tone based on the leader of the team, or how do you decide what's the best way? Because I don't think it's a wrong or right way to do it, but what's the best way to discern how to take this group of people? You know, have you, in your experience, do you have some wisdom on that?
Well, I mean, it just depends. I mean, my answer on a lot of these questions that are pretty general is going to be, it depends.
Yeah, fair enough.
It depends on how big the team is. It depends on who's on the team. It depends on the leader. It depends. So you have to kind of evaluate what you've got to work with and go from there. I mean, yeah.
You guys,
So-
how are we ever going to make a single book that tells everybody it's the answer to everything if we're
Yeah,
going
this
to
is the key.
I mean, we have to at least sell the idea that there's a knowable answer out there somewhere and we could give it to you for $19.95, I would think. I mean, just, you know, think in future state.
Yeah. Well, my favorite answer to a lot of the questions I'm sure that come up on your show, which I know 15 minutes about, is you know, how do you develop judgment about these things? Well, the answer is from experience. How do you develop experience? From poor judgment. That's Alan Clemens said that.
Go suck at it.
20 years ago he said that, and I'm like, that is true. You got to fail and your brain goes, oh, okay. And even then you don't get it right. So it's an inexact science at best.
Lee, that's your show, or Andres, that's your show description for this one.
Yeah, poor judgment. Go suck at it first. Oh man, well we can end the recording here. Thank you guys so much. We'll see you guys in a couple weeks. You two don't leave the call. We'll end the recording and then say goodbye to you guys. But thank you guys for listening. We'll catch you in the next Derby meeting in a couple of weeks. Goodbye, everyone. Peace out.